Welcome to another edition of Trunk and Tales as we navigate what is happening in the world of politics. I'm Stacy Smith, and if you're watching or listening to this podcast, I ask that you hit the like or the subscribe button. We are only 11 months away now from the midterm election, and it would appear things are beginning to lean toward the Democrats. We'll talk about that, the role of independents, and at least one party will begin discussing open primaries in Pennsylvania. Those topics and more coming up in this edition of Trunk and Tales. And with me to talk about this and other topics are my panel of political analysts and experts, and they are the former Republican governor of Pennsylvania, Tom Corbett. Mr. Corbett also served as the state attorney general for the state of Pennsylvania and as the U.S. attorney for the Western District of Pennsylvania. Mr. Corbett now teaches law and practices law as well. Also joining me on the Democratic side is the Pennsylvania State Party Democratic Chairman, Eugene DePasquale. Mr. DePasquale also served as the Auditor General for Pennsylvania, holding that office for 8 years. And prior to that, he was elected to the state legislature. He now teaches at Pitt and at York College. Keith Schmidt was the state director for former Republican Senator Rick Santorum. Keith also consulted Santorum's 2012 presidential campaign. Keith has his own consulting firm. And Joe Mystic, a Democrat as well. Joe's background includes consulting Democrats across the state and serving in city government. Joe teaches law, and you can read his thoughts on life and politics every weekend in the Tribune Review. Now, I say that Joe has consulted Democrats across the state for many years. He's tried to consult Republicans, but they don't necessarily listen to what Joe has to say.
Only Governor Corbett, but not until he left office.
Yeah, okay. Well, then he's all ears at that point. Yeah. Well, just what everyone wanted to hear, we are now just 11 months away from the midterm elections. We have had an off-year election and special elections, and given the analysis by national media pundits, things are beginning to lean toward the Democrats. Do all of you agree? Keith, I'll start with you.
Yeah, certainly it's a warning sign has been sounded. We're going to see if we properly react to it. There are times in the history of politics in my career that people ignore them and they pay a heavy price. Sometimes they learn something. We have to hope that the Republicans learn from this off-year election. But the numbers and the opinion pages and the pundits and everything changes so quickly. That 11 months sounds like it's close, but we're gonna have 1,000 storylines in the next 11 months, and I hate to keep on going back continually to the same drum, but it really is going to be a snapshot of where things are when absentee ballots go out next year. I'd like to think, people look at trends, people look at things over time, they give people, they're patient. No, Americans aren't patient. It's going to be a moment in time. And the Democrats and Republicans understand that that's probably when absentee ballots go in the mail in most states next year. And if the pocketbook issues are under control, if the economy has moved in the direction that the president and the Republicans in Congress continue to promise it's going to head towards, well, then I think it could be a good year. If it's not, we're going to get the blame. I mean, we have the presidency, we have the House and Senate. They don't care about the margins. Everybody's, it's close. Doesn't matter. We're in charge. So for good or ill, we're going to get credit or blame next November. So the Republicans are hoping that in the next, 8-9 months, things change. Listen, I lived through this 40 plus years ago as a college student fighting the fight at Pitt with people that, wanted to hang Reagan out to dry. I mean, the trickle-down economics weren't working, and they wanted them out. I mean, they were very frustrated in his first term, but eventually it did turn around. I mean, the question is the sitting president going to have that same fortune? Is it going to turn around in time for the people to understand that they're comfortable to keep this team in place? And as I said before, and I'm running a little long here, but foreign policy, although it's important and to me it's window dressing to the national economy and affordability. It's the economy, stupid. If people feel good about the money in their pocket and the economy, then the Republicans will have a good year. So we'll have to wait and see in the next 8-9 months.
Joseph.
Yeah, I agree with Keith. I think that's a very accurate description. and we are very far out right now. But if the economy, affordability is not a con job made up by Democrats. You can't tell Americans that things are great when they're out there day to day trying to shop for groceries and Christmas presents, and they know better. They know better than the experts because they feel it every day. Now, if that doesn't change, and I think if there's no solution, Republican solution to health care, Democrats are looking at a pretty good election, in the upcoming election. And as Keith said, it depends on whether Republicans look at the warning signs. And nobody did that more famously than Bill Clinton. In the midterms in his first term, he realized he'd gone too far to the left, the party had, and he moved them back towards the center and maybe even a little right of center on some issues, and it inured to our benefit.
Governor.
Stacy, I can't think of another time in my lifetime I'm now over 75.
Governor, I'm going to ask you if you can move a little closer to the microphone here.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, better.
Okay. I can't imagine a time in my lifetime, and I'm now 75, that we are in such an unusual position. Mercurial is how I would describe the political scene right now. And that starts with the White House. And we don't know what the next thought is coming out of the White House and what they're going to do. In my opinion, since inauguration day, it has worked more so politically to the benefit of the Democrats than to the Republicans. And that's why Democrats are very happy looking at the 2026 election and the midterms, and they're working so hard. And the Republicans are working hard to not lose their leadership in the Congress and in the Senate at this point in time. Very hard for any of us sitting here now or anybody in the country to predict what's going on and what's going to happen without having a better idea of what's coming out of Washington, both on the legislative side and on the executive side. So I sit in a very tall building here looking out on Pittsburgh saying, I have no idea where we're going to be a year from now, and I don't think anybody else does.
Well, let's find out what the state Democratic Party chairman thinks about that.
So I all of these things I agree with. I want to add, these 2 points. One is the Republicans are still in charge with both an opportunity and a challenge. The opportunity is, look, they can do things politically, legislatively, executive order-wise, and administratively to change the dynamic. The problem they have is, I say this just from visual, I think Donald Trump is hitting a wall. When I say hitting a wall, I mean the same force of nature that he was in 2016, 2017, 2018. That's just not the guy that's president right now. And that doesn't, I'm not saying he can't do the job, but that guy that would go out there and hold 17 rallies in 3 days, and how he did that, no one knows. I just don't think that guy's there anymore. At the same time, I think the same reasons that he won are the same reasons why he's unpopular now. And I think he seized on some opportunities that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris gave him, but now I think he's gone too far with that. And just Trump doesn't seem like a guy that's going to tap the brakes and recalibrate the way, let's be clear, Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton both did that. They both recalibrated. And I just don't think Donald Trump at this stage of his political career is going to recalibrate. If that happens, we will have a huge election, but it's still to be determined.
Well, you're saying tap the brakes, and this goes to something what Joe said about Mr. Clinton changing a little bit in midstream there. Weren't both Reagan and Clinton forced to change because of what happened in Congress? I mean, they had an opposition. Reagan always had it, I think. Well, no, he didn't.
He had the Senate for 6 years.
He had the Senate. But they both were faced with that. I mean, isn't that the reason they changed course?
Yeah, but they both also were pretty astute about reading the popularity polls. I mean, Clinton and Reagan, both in their first terms, dipped pretty low before they both came back to win convincing re-elections. Reagan by one of the largest landslides in the history of the United States. I just think Trump lives in the world. And look, I'm not saying this as a partisan. Obviously, I'm a Democrat and the chair of the party, but Trump will go out there and say no president's ever been more popular than me. I'm like, FDR, Ronald Reagan, I beg to differ. But I think he lives in a world where he believes that. And if you believe you are the greatest, then why would you change? And you just will run out and say, well, these opinion polls are wrong. I think he lives in a bubble now between the Oval Office and Mar-a-Lago, and I'm not sure he gets honest advice anymore.
During the Reagan years, the Republicans were square minority, were a solid minority in the House. There was no even chance of ever taking the House back then. You wouldn't even think about it. So the president then was able to, in many times, he did, if you remember, a lot of addresses from the Oval Office telling people to call their congressman to do things. You know, he was actually able to separate himself, then separate the blame and push it on to Congress at times in a way that the American people bought. And the big difference is he still found a way to remain personally popular, even though, you know, some of the economy was going south and whatnot, and the people in his party wore it more in Congress than he did. It's different now. I mean, I get that. And I also believe that there's a lot of very disruptive things that this administration has decided to pursue relative to the economy. And it's either going to work or it's not. I mean, it's disruptive. So I don't think, one thing for sure, for all the things that they're doing, we're not going to be in the same position today as we are the day that they send out the absentee ballots. It's either going to be much worse or much better. I actually think that the disruption is going to do something, and maybe they're all in because they still buy their approach, their disruptive approach to tariffs and other things in the economy will pay its residuals. We're going to wait and see, but I can assure you, it's not going to be anywhere close to where we are right now.
Yeah, I think this is a mistake that the Trump administration is making. The Secretary of the Treasury and others have stated, well, just give us some time, and these things are going to, kick in, and everything's going to be so much better. The American people are looking at Christmas time and buying groceries, and they're saying, we can't wait for something to kick in a year from now. At least that's.
Interestingly, they're still spending a lot of money, Stacey. Just so you know.
They're still spending.
I mean, they're breaking all kinds of records, which let me tell you. There's a good article. I don't know, in a California newspaper about the economy in the last 40 years. When it does take hits, spending is affected. Like, people are spending less, and they blame the people in Washington. This is an anomaly of sorts. There's no doubt about it. There's an affordability issue, but people apparently still are spending and breaking records, which is a little bit odd to me.
Real quick,
I think there's another issue here, but it goes to likability. When you talk about Reagan and Clinton, they were both guys you could have a beer with, as they used to say. Likable guys. Trump's a crude vulgarian. He even his friends are shying away from him these days in with some of his remarks. And I think that just is grinding people down. It's just wearing them out. They're just tired of it. They're tired of the insults, the bad behavior. Most Americans are decent people. They're still kind to people with whom they may disagree. And he just does not have that tone, does not set that tone. And I think he's wearing us out.
I want to follow up on Joe, and there's also a follow-up to Keith's point. Reagan and Clinton both. Now, we use them, but they weren't perfect. But when you heard them speak from the Oval Office, both of them, you go back and watch what they said, there was a broader appeal to the broader public. And if you listen to them, unless you knew their ideology, you wouldn't necessarily know if they were a Republican or a Democrat when they spoke from the Oval Office. And if you take and you were to watch a Donald Trump, Merry Christmas, except for all those cultural leftists who I hope drown in the ocean. And if he said that right now, would anybody be shocked? And that was funny. And I'll be honest, in 2016 it was kind of funny, but at some point it just gets old.
Governor, anything from you on this one?
I sit here and I wonder where we're going, where my young grandchildren are going to have a country, because we are changing so much. And it's beyond the president. The technology has changed things dramatically. COVID has had a huge impact across the entire spectrum. I see it with my grandchildren. We see it in the colleges and the universities and teaching. What is real? What isn't real? I mean, AI has changed everything. So I'm a little pessimistic about the future to a certain extent. But when it comes to election politics, it's all down into the last 6 months before that election, as far as I'm concerned. The question is, who are the candidates going to be? Who was willing to be a candidate today? I mean, I couldn't even picture wanting to run again at this point in time because of the technology, because of the vitriol that's going on. So where do you get good candidates? And are we training our young people to be good candidates? So I have a little coal to dish out at this Christmas season on next year's future.
I can understand that.
To dovetail what Joe said, I have to, I can't disagree. When things are going well, you don't need friends. I mean, they'll give you credit if they're going well. You could be a horse's ass, and they don't care as long as they're doing well. But then when it gets lean in your professional life, or you go through some tough times, that's when you need friends. So that's part of the problem here. Is there isn't a lot of people rallying around him because he's not a person that ingratiates himself and builds relationships on a personal level like that. It's a very narrow-minded, narcissistic approach to things, and it works when things are going well. And it might work again for him next year. It might go full circle. But one thing's for sure, he ain't changing. So when it's bad, it just means it's a lot worse. That's all. So it still has to get good. And his personality affects him right now. That's why it's his popularity or his approval ratings in the 30s and whatnot. But again, will that come back? They'll forgive him for all his ills and his behavior as long as the economy's rolling and they're feeling comfortable again. It's unfortunate, but that's just the way it is. But it's a lean time right now because you're right, Joe. This guy is not a guy that builds relationships or friendships with people, even in his own party.
I want to get back to the political part of this as well. If I'm not mistaken, and you guys know this, these kind of statistics, Pennsylvania has been trending more and more to an even, almost, I can't call it even, but Democrats now hold a much narrower edge in registration than Republicans, than they had over the Republicans, but also the number of independents has increased, if I'm not mistaken. And the reason I'm bringing up Pennsylvania, of course, is because it is a key state. It's in presidential elections especially. So where do the independents fall on this? This is from the Cook Political Report. Simply put, the last 10 months have not been the cruise that these independent voters signed up for, meaning for President Trump in 2024. Saber-rattling at Venezuela, stripping many federal programs and undermining vaccines, bulldozing the East Wing of the White House, dissuading the best STEM minds in the world from pursuing graduate programs in the U.S., to name just a few, were not top-of-mind concerns when they cast their ballots 11 months ago. Just as Biden Democrats misinterpreted their victory in 2020, Trump has done that in 2024. Agree?
Both sides have continued to do that. You campaign on fixing these not micro, that they're small issues, but you campaign on fixing the economy, then you get pressured to do the whole agenda that very few people have voted for or bought in. And that's an across-the-board issue. But Keith knows this, and the governor knows this as well as anybody. You get enormous pressure from your bases to do everything.
What, Governor?
Sorry, Eugene, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh,
Let me go back to something that's been bugging me now for a few years. I really believe that the independents had no choice as to who to vote for at general election time because they didn't have a choice in the primary. And Pennsylvania is one of only 9 states that has a closed primary. And I am now a full advocate. I think my brethren at the law school, Joe Mystic, has come over to my side on this.
I have, Governor.
We need to open the primary up so that independents can go in and say, I'm going to vote as a Democrat this year, or I'm going to vote as a Republican this year, and help select the candidates. Because what we're getting is extremes at that end. Now, would it have changed the outcome of the Republican nomination for president? Probably not. Would it have changed the Republican nomination for governor 3 years ago? Could well have. And that's where we are ignoring the vast majority, as we see it now, across the country, but mostly in Pennsylvania, from having some input as to who the candidates are. And I think that that is going to be, if we continue down this road, that's going to be our downfall. My problem is, we have legislators that, oh, we have to keep it that way, we have to keep it closed. But why? Give me a good reason. Other states aren't closed primaries. We're in the way in the minority of that. If you want to
One of the byproducts of open primaries also is a enormous increase in registering independent or in not declaring a party, and they have found in study groups and whatnot and research that those states that have changed that, there's a sense of a higher accountability to elected officials, or more accountable, because they can't rely on a large majority of either party. There's a large independent group that they don't know where they're falling and are more sensitive to people's needs. So I thought that was an interesting outcome as well. That I do think if with the governor and Joe and others pushing for this, it could raise the number of registered independents exponentially. And I'm anxious to hear what our state, the Democratic State Party chairman, thinks about this.
Yeah, the governor and Joe may be pleased to know that our next state committee meeting, we're actually going to be having a policy discussion on this very point.
Oh, good.
We're having an internal staff meeting with some outside entities in the next couple of weeks. Obviously, got the holidays, but those are getting set up because I'm pushing this. Look, I can't force the state party to do this. As the chair, I'm for it. As the auditor general, I was for it. As a state rep, I introduced a bill on this. And this was before we had sort of the siloing that we have now. I think it forces candidates at an earlier standpoint, whether they're running for governor or state house, to talk to a broader swath of the public. And I believe
I think it will be the salvation of both parties. Perhaps the salvation, the salvation of the two-party system, if we allow independents to pick a party during the primaries.
One thing I want to say out loud here, that is, It is a myth, and you're going to hear this from extremes on both parties, that, it's going to allow the other party to sort of get involved in your... That is a myth. It happens with 10 or 12 people. The vast majority of independents that vote in the Democratic primary are left-leaning independents. The vast majority of independents that vote in the Republican primary in all these other states are right-leaning independents, but they are more moderates in their party, and that to me is a good thing, having to talk to those folks. And if there's 3 or 4 voters in the whole state that decide to play games, okay, you can't stop that, but it's literally a handful of people. That's it.
All right. 2026 will see the entire House and 35 Senate races on the ballot, 36 governor's races on the ballot nationwide, including in Pennsylvania. Each state and each congressional district, of course, is different, but will a national theme, such as the economy, carry the day for the congressional races and the Senate races coming up, and even the governor's races?
There'll be some type of tide that will lift the boats of one party. Right now, I would bet on ours, but that will, obviously we've got a long way to go. But the tide will rise the boat of one of the parties, probably 2 to 3 points beyond what those campaigns do.
Does it have to be? Go ahead, Governor.
I agree, but keep in mind all politics are local. There can be some upsets, I'm quoting Tip O'Neill, the former Democrat Speaker of the House. All politics are local. There could be some upsets. Let's look at the governor's race coming up. Josh Shapiro is setting himself up, working hard, creating an organization that his predecessors as a Democrat governor, both of them, didn't set up an organization from what I see that he is doing. And he has visions beyond the governor's mansion. That being the case, though, one thing could change the whole dynamic that we can't predict what that is. And so we can make these statements today with the cautionary tale that anything can happen between now and Election Day 26 and 28.
Okay. You brought up Governor Shapiro. He has yet to officially declare that he's running for re-election, correct?
Do we really have to wait for that?
Guys, let me pierce the corporate veil. He's running.
If
I
could just
I
look
didn't
at
think
his
he would
travel
not be
schedule,
running.
I can tell you where he's going.
But Axios had a story the other day, and I'm trying to find my notes on it here, stating that, and they even mentioned you, Eugene.
Yeah, apparently I was a key part of that strategy, which I didn't even know about.
In that he's actively trying to make sure that some seats either remain in the Democratic hand in Congress, or he's trying to flip them. And is this part of this organization you're talking about, Governor? That he's setting up on the side, I guess I can call it that.
Well, I think it's part of his own internal strategy. I don't know how many people are participating at the governor's residence with him on that. But I think it clearly is his strategy of not only next year, but he has been named in 4 or 5 different articles recently, lengthy bios on him about as a candidate in 28 for the presidency, which will be an open seat at that point in time. So is this an overall strategy? I know the governor pretty well. We get along very well. But he doesn't do something without planning a great deal ahead of time.
Well, part of the article was, in what you're alluding to, is that he's setting it up so that he has a lot of support if he does make this run in 2028. The other thing interesting about Shapiro that came out,
Stacey, that's called politics,
yeah, it's, yeah,
right?
exactly.
You know,
The other interesting thing is that he basically came out in I think it was at the New Yorker or the Atlantic magazine and said that
Either
Kamala
one of the
Harris-
two.
Pardon me?
It was either one of the two. I know where you're going.
Yeah, that he basically called Kamala Harris a liar in her book is how she portrayed him. How does that sit well within a party when you get a faction like one side calling the other side a liar or denigrating the other one?
I wasn't in the room when they met, so I can't comment on the specifics, but my guess is that within a week we'll be on to something else.
Agreed.
Yeah, well, no argument there. But something that has not been moved on quickly is Senator John Fetterman and his relationship with the Democratic Party, if we can call it that. I was kind of surprised to find out that in his book, I have not read it, I've only had excerpts that I've seen, basically that he and the governor have not spoken for quite a long time, that they don't speak to one another. And I find that kind of surprising, but you guys fill me in if this is something that happens all the time, that you have 2 major state figures, one a senator, one a governor, of the same party, and they are not speaking to one another.
I have spoken to both several times, and they've never mentioned that to me. I'm not saying it's inaccurate. For what that's worth, they've never said, "Oh, I'm not speaking to him." I've not heard that, but wouldn't be the first time there is a political rivalry in the United States, inside a state.
Right.
Both sides.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is. it may not be the first, and it certainly will not be the last time.
Yeah, and the senator's rhetoric is not going to be easily embraced by this sitting governor either. I mean, he has to walk a thin line right now. I mean, he's not exactly ingratiated himself with rank and file Democrats, Fetterman, and he's probably thankful now that his cycle isn't 26. You know, his cycle's 28. He could, again, for as long as I keep on saying, 11 months is a long time. 2 years and 11 months is even longer. So he could go back to where he needs to be if he has to survive. But I would be surprised if they would have been close, because there's some obviously national ambitions for the sitting governor, and Fetterman isn't a guy that you want behind you on the podium when you're seeking that type of higher office right now amongst the Democratic Party.
Can I ask a question of my Democratic colleagues?
Absolutely.
Sure. You're the governor.
You in the front, sir.
Has the senator indicated that he intends to run in 28? Because my feeling is he's not going to.
The fairest analysis I can give you is that it is undetermined at this point.
yeah, it's a long way off. You could change your mind a dozen times between now and then. Sometimes you have to say that you're going to run again just to maintain your relevance and to be able to speak with some authority. I'm sure he doesn't want to declare himself as a lame duck
Right.
senator.
And he did say when the Working Families Party said they were going to try to recruit a primary opponent, he said that would only make me look better, which was the first public indication that he would. He still is a sitting senator, and if he were to run, he would be very difficult to unbeat, not impossible, but tough to beat in a primary. But there has been nothing definitive is the fairest thing I could say.
I want to wrap this up because we're almost out of time. Eugene, you just said he would be difficult to defeat as an incumbent running in the primary. But we hear that these progressives within the party, they are not going to support him at all.
Yeah, and I said difficult, not impossible. But look, again, 2.5 years. There's a part of me that just doesn't want to go through all the mechanics. But does one person run? Do three run? He still is a sitting United States senator, and he would have time to mend those fences if he chose to do that. And when you're the incumbent, it gives you a great advantage to do that. Whether he decides to do that or not, I can't speak to that. But he would have 2.5 years to mend fences. That's a lot of time if he chooses to do that.
Sure.
All right. Go ahead.
No, I agree. I agree with you.
All right. Gentlemen, thank you so much for participating in this edition of Trunk and Tales. And we hope that you at home when you're watching or listening to this particular podcast on whatever platform you happen to be using, hit the like or the subscribe button. To my panelists here and the governor, Eugene, Joe, Keith, thank you so much for joining us this past year for Trunk and Tales. And I wish you all a joyous holiday season and a fantastic 2026. And guess what that means? Just more politics. Thanks for joining us again, and we'll talk
Thanks, Stacy.
next year.
Thanks, Stacy.
All right. Bye-bye.